Good morning. Thank you, Allie. Is this good? Yes. It's wonderful to see all of you. And guess what? I saw lots and lots of elk. Yay! They're just so beautiful, so majestic, and I really enjoy that. Listening and learning from fear. Now, I know you've all probably heard many times there are only two emotions, love and fear. And that we create our lives every moment, whether we're coming from love or coming from fear. But whatever we come from, it creates our lives. I also know that you've probably heard the samurai story before, but I love that story. I love that story because it shows the back and forth between love and fear that we can move very quickly into. It's kind of part of being human, I think. But it also shows that we can bring light to the darkness. But we cannot bring dark to the light. The monk represents the light which emanates love. The samurai represents darkness that one lives in when that one is filled with fear. Fear is a very strong emotion. And as Dennis Jones reminds us, fear is having its way with a lot of people today, just as it has for generations. However, you notice that the monk, when faced with an angry samurai who could impale him with his sword instantly, kept his light, kept his grounding, kept his conscious awareness in the face of the threatening fear standing before him. So even though fear is strong and can be very powerful in creating the experiences in our lives, love's power is so much bigger that as in our human consciousness, we can't even comprehend it. David Hawkins, in his book, Power versus Force, highly recommend you read that. He says, although only 15% of the world's population is above the critical consciousness level of 200, the collective power of that 15% has the weight to counterbalance the negativity of the remaining 85% of the world's people. Were it not for these counterbalances, mankind would self-destruct out of the sheer mass of its unopposed negativity. The difference in the power between a loving thought and a fearful thought is so enormous as to be beyond the capacity of the human imagination to easily comprehend. We can see from the analysis above, however, that even a few loving thoughts during the course of the day more than counterbalance all of our negative thoughts. Negative thoughts are based in fear. In Hawkins' map of consciousness, there are levels of consciousness ranging from 200 to 1,000, and it is calculated logarithmically. So levels below 200 are considered to be based in fear. And as the consciousness levels move up and go beyond 200, it is entering into consciousness levels into neutrality and then on up the scale to love and enlightenment, which is 1,000. So we are beings of love, divine beings. So where does this fear come from? On the way over here, I left 15 minutes later than normal. I realized I was fearing being late. And it took me a little while to realize, wow, you're just experiencing what you're going to talk about today. And so, I really truly believe that we teach what we need to learn. And so I started thinking about what I was going to talk to you about today and finally settled down a little bit. And of course, I was here on time. But, that fear came up. And it comes up, before we even realize it sometimes. The primal energy of fear has been the root cause of every war ever fought, and every act of violence, selfishness, and greed visited upon humankind. It has caused more suffering than any other single thing. It is like it has a life of its own, and it has a mission to invade every aspect of our lives, rendering us feeling helpless, hopeless, alone, and powerless. Now, everyone has at some time known the debilitating effects of fear, and we try to avoid it as much as possible. In the face of fear, there is an acronym that Dennis Jones has given us. Forget everything and run. Okay? And we think that we can hide from it and outrun it. And what we do instead is we head for the medicine cabinet, liquor cabinet, refrigerator, the shopping mall, or some other form of behavior that offers a temporary escape. Children, will cover up their heads with their bedspread, or they'll hide under the bed, or they'll jump in the bed with the parents, trying to avoid the fear. Now, we have been conditioned to run from fear for millennia. However, fear will not go away when you run from it. In fact, it will surface again, and usually in greater force. Whatever energy that you send out collects like energy and always comes back to you amplified. So that is why our fears get bigger and bigger and bigger until we decide that we want to do something. What is fear? Well, as Dennis Jones writes in his book, When Fear Speaks, Listen, he says fear is an idea about something, first birthed in the mind and instantly imbued in the body, skewed by a specific mental and emotional predisposition, perspective, or perception. No one can point to fear and say, there it is. However, we can point to the things out there that stimulate the invisible energy of fear, causing it to arise from within. It's like an early warning system alerting us to what is percolating in the mind before it boils over. Can you feel that when you're feeling fear? Yes. In truth, though, fear does not exist until we breathe life into it. What would have happened to the monk if he had succumbed to the fear of possible death? So what is the basis of all this fear? Fear is the product of the thought that we are alone. Divine beings, thinking we are separated from others and forgetting our oneness, our connection to our authentic power, our source. And we begin to feel this separateness around the age of 7, sometimes even earlier, depending upon the circumstances of the child. A Course in Miracles describes this fear as the thought of separation from God. And this thought, it calls the ego. So every fear originates from the same place within, where an attachment to a concern for death or a loss dominates our attention and reigns supreme. And those thoughts come because we feel we are separated. Now, it could be our own death or the death of a loved one, but it can also be the death or loss of a lifestyle, a relationship, a career, a bank account, possessions, reputation, or health status. And all of these issues contain a concern about losing our personal power. So instead of looking at fear as something that we must run from, what if we looked at those fears as messengers, urging us to look at something within us that we need to look at, learn from, and then release so that we are free from them? So why not change the acronym of fear from forget everything and run to face everything and rethink? How can we learn to use fear as a springboard to transcend its crippling energy rather than mindlessly pushing against it or running from it, ultimately giving it more power over us? Jones tells us that transcending our fears of every nature begins with 3 necessary requirements: curiosity, inquisitiveness, and being teachable. Curiosity. That just means we have an open mind to this exploration. Inquisitiveness. That is asking questions about everything that we're thinking, saying, and doing. And that takes a lot of honesty, because normally what we do is think, well, this is just the way it is, and we don't question it. But with that attitude of that's just the way it is, because our thoughts create our lives, that's going to be the way it is. No changes. And the third one is being teachable. And that is that willingness to step out of that box, look honestly at our lives, our beliefs, our thoughts, and question them. Are they true? Because when you do that, with that openness, you begin to realize there's so much more out there, and you begin that journey from the box into life and all it has to offer. In his book, Jones lists the 7 most prevalent messengers of fear: anger, worry, judgment, selfishness, shame, loneliness, and uncertainty. The first messenger: anger and its descendants, rage and resentment. Rage violently surges outward, and resentment passively submerges inward. Will Rogers said, "People who fly into a rage always make a bad landing." Isn't that the truth? While all of these cause physical and spiritual wreckage, if allowed to boil within, resentment is the most potent poison generated in the human body. Greg Braden warns us that this poison begins within us first and is most potent within us. It will go out to whoever you're directing it to and affect them also, but it is most potent within ourselves because we will be damaged at the source. So what are the underlying causes of anger? The sense of loss of power and control. Anger gets attention, and that leads to more power and more control. And that need to be right. We're all familiar with that, aren't we? That need to be right. But notice that anger, those letters, anger, is included in the word danger. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Yes, yeah. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "For every minute you remain angry, you give up 60 seconds of peace of mind." I put that on my mirror. So the second messenger is worry and its descendants of anxiety and regret. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. It just doesn't seem reasonable to me, but that's what Deepak Chopra says. But 95% of those are negative. Worrying about what happened in the past, wishing we could change it, or worrying about what the future will bring. Worrying is praying for what you don't want. I also have that on my mirror. Well, actually not my mirror, my desk. But unfortunately, we are usually on autopilot, aren't we? Because we have forgotten to be consciously aware of what we're thinking, saying, and doing. What do? We create these scenarios in our minds. We believe our minds, which is the first downfall. And we create all of these what-ifs in our lives, and they scare us, don't they? They scare us. And they're all based on illusions. Attachments here are to the past and the future, and we are forgetting to live in the present moment. And that is the only moment that we have to make any of our choices and to experience life. So again, the fear of loss and control, hopelessness, and the desire for instant gratification fuel these worries that we have, the anxiety and the regret that we feel. The third messenger, judgment, and its descendants of superiority, inferiority, and hate. Oh, at the time we felt separate from our mother and began to feel a sense of otherness within us, we felt a loss of connection from our source of nurturing food, love, and protection. And from all the things we learned and experienced from parents, teachers, peers, etc., most of us developed a sense of identity based on the quality of those experiences. Superiority is actually a sense of inadequacy. Inferiority is a sense of unworthiness. And hatred is seeing your guilt in others because you have projected your guilt upon them. So in judgment, we believe in right and wrong, good and bad. We make assumptions and we label almost everything with these attributes. However, when you are judging others, it is because you are seeing yourself in them. And that makes sense, because how could you see it if it wasn't within you? They are a reflection of your beliefs about yourself. No one who is, spurting out judgments of others understands that, and it is self-perpetuating. So there is a difference between judgment and discernment. Discernment is an observation or perception of what is, with no opinion or emotion attached to it. So it is opening and relying upon the guidance of your internal source of infinite intelligence, which is incapable of judging anything or anyone. The fourth messenger, selfishness, and its descendants of greed, envy, and jealousy. This is a belief in lack, and the ego will say to you, get it before someone else does. You deserve it more than they do. All of which means the more you have, the more powerful you are, hence an attempt at quenching the sense of loss and loss of control that you are really feeling. However, the universe is an abundant universe, and I think we all really know that, don't we, in our hearts? There is always enough for everyone. I think we have a distribution problem, but there's always enough. So it's a matter of knowing this truth within you, that you are abundance already, that abundance flows to you constantly, flows within you and from you constantly, because that is what the universe truly is. So lack is an illusion, just like all the other attributes of fear. The fifth messenger, shame and its descendants of guilt, embarrassment, and perfectionism. And these are all attempts to hide the feelings of not enough, unlovable, and I'm a despicable human being, a sinner unworthy of joy and abundance. And fitting right in there is also the sixth messenger, loneliness and its descendants of vulnerability and pride. A deep fear of loss, even death, unimportant, and therefore alone. Nobody loves me. We can confuse loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness brings feelings of being abandoned and unloved. But aloneness is a natural state because it maintains the knowingness of connection. So when you can be alone and be happy, and you can also be alone or with all of your peeps and your loved ones and all that, and be happy too. Just because you're not with someone doesn't mean you're disconnected and unhappy. And the seventh messenger, uncertainty and its descendants, change, doubt, and procrastination. Uncertainty and change are scary, because it means we must move out of our comfort boxes and face something new. We want to be in control of knowing what is happening now and in the future. But Krishnamurti said, to know is ignorance. Not to know is the beginning of wisdom. So this means that we are open to the new instead of fearing it. The fear of loss is a concern, and the fearful mind looks at usually what's wrong and not what is right. Kind of, you have that feeling, don't you? First thing we say is, what's wrong with it? Instead of what's right with it. Doubt manifests as a loss of faith in our ability to adjust and be discerning from our innate wisdom and our intuition. Procrastination is running from the inevitable because of lack of faith within ourselves. As Jones writes, procrastination thrives on instant gratification by kicking the can down the road called tomorrow, fantasizing that conditions will be more favorable then. And then he ends, dream on, dream on. So all of these messages of fear are here for a reason. They are the catalyst to bring your attention to those thoughts and things within you that need attention for you to be free to live the life that you desire. Face everything and rethink. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Why? Because you are changing your perception of reality when you do this. And that creates your reality that you want to change. That's how powerful we are. So self-awareness is an extraordinary gift from the Creator. Few humans are truly aware of that. Most of us are sleepwalking and allowing fear to do what it wants to with us. And they're totally in the dark that they are being controlled, and yet they possess and express all the clues openly. And what are those clues? The anger, the worry, the judgment, the selfishness, shame, loneliness, and uncertainty. Those are the clues that you're living in fear. So when we choose to pay attention to what we are thinking, saying, and doing, we become self-aware. And we enter our genuine wisdom, intelligence, and our power. And here is where we are operating from our light. And remember, when we're operating from our light, the darkness cannot invade. Another thing on my desk. Yeah. And that means that fear doesn't have its way with us anymore. Will we feel fear again? Yes, of course we will. But we will have an awareness and a knowledge to know how to face it, how to learn from it, and then let it go. So your true essence is as a silent witness to the physical. So in self-awareness, you come from this essence as a silent, empowered witness, just as that monk did when he faced that angry samurai. Nothing can invade your powerfulness at that point. As Jones writes, he says, the ability to think a thought or have a feeling, step outside of your mind and body, and impartially observe or analyze that thought or feeling lays the groundwork for a new life. It allows us to engage life at a more intentional level and play a conscious role in shaping and choosing our own destiny. It is then that we can use the powerful gift of discernment to either embrace or challenge the thoughts, beliefs, and ideas that pass so freely through our mind, and we will not pay another second thought about it. I want to close with a quote from Krishnamurti. What is needed, rather than running away or controlling or suppressing or any other resistance, is understanding of fear. That means watch it, learn about it, come into contact with it. For we are to learn about fear and not to escape it. So fear is our friend if we listen and we feel it. And as soon as you do that, its power fades. And you do not then stand there in terror, but you say, wow, this is telling me something about what is inside of me. And as soon as we go there, that's the beginning of our healing, our understanding, and our creating the life that we want. So look at fear as your friend. Even though it's scary, look at it as your friend. So I'd like to invite you to join me in some meditation for a few moments. Get comfortable in your seats, please, and just relax. And close your eyes. And take some refreshing breaths that give your body permission to feel safe and loved. I know there was a lot in this sermon today, a lot to think about. However, it only comes down to one thing: a remembrance of who we are. We are divine beings of love, connected through the oneness of consciousness. And when we truly remember and feel that within our minds and our hearts, the light shines and the darkness cannot enter. Fear is the darkness. It is not real. When you are living from your higher consciousness of love, you are attracting only love into your life. So when you look at all that is in front of you from the eyes of love and connection, you realize that you are looking at yourself. It is easy then to love all that is in front of you. Every person, everything, because you see beyond their fear and see their divinity. We did not come forth to suffer. We came forth to enjoy relationships, love each other, and co-create as the source of all life creates. With this as our intention and giving it attention, there's just no room for fear. Should fear come up in your mind, see yourself step out of your body and look from your silent witness, your silent wisdom, at the feeling of fear your body is experiencing. From this true self, you know you're always safe. You can face that fear with courage and ask it to reveal its message. And then be courageous enough to bless it as it fades away. Love is what we are born with. Fear is what we learn. Just as we can't unthink a thought, we can't unlearn that which we have learned, because it is information or experience embedded in our minds. But we can think a new thought, a higher thought linked to love and a remembrance of our oneness. So let's just take that thought into the silence for just a moment. So as you begin to bring your awareness back into the space, remember who you are and open to the messages that the universe puts in front of us, even in the form of fear. Fear is a messenger. It truly is not something that we need to cower and avoid. In fact, fear will strengthen us within when we face it. So, face everything and rethink. And here's another one. False evidence appearing real. Thank you. And that is the courtesy of Al-Anon. I like that. All right, so today in class we're going to delve deeper into this little book of Dennis Jones. Wonderful little book. I love it because it's little, but and it's very succinct. I love those kind of teachings. And so I hope you will join us. Thank you very much.